What's up, guys? C-Stacks here, and we're back on the Build Phase podcast. I'm Mr. Ben, and what's going on versus community? This is your boy Cell. Actually, none of that is right. If you're familiar with the card game Versus System 2 PCG, then you've probably listened to a Versus podcast before. These podcasts cover topics like game meta, strategy, hot takes, unboxing videos, and maybe even the occasional rant. We are not looking to jump into that pool. Those guys have it well covered. Instead, we here at Deconstruct the Universe will be looking to do, well, just that. Deconstruct the universe of Versus by looking at the source material for the cards you know and love. Not only will we be talking about where the card art came from, but we'll be diving into some character history as well. My name is Patrick, and I'll be your host. Deconstructing with me are Justin McDowell, you may know him as Chudston on social media, and Matt Perrell. Today we'll be looking at Jessica Jones and Clea, but before we do, I have a few questions for the both of you. So Justin, we'll start with you. How long have you been reading comics, and how did you start?
I've been reading comics since I was a pretty little kid. I don't remember the exact age, but I was probably, I want to say 10, maybe 9, don't remember exactly. But I got started based on a couple things. One, I got an issue of Batman for my birthday one time, I think it was, and I remember that pretty distinctly. And then another one that I remember pretty well was getting an Iron Man annual, and it was part of this crossover called the Terminus Effect or something like that. And I just remember being blown away, seeing this rack of comics in a gas station while I was on vacation, and just sort of clicking in my head that there were like the Sunday comics, the Sunday funnies, but they were like whole books, like with whole plots in them. They weren't just like 3-panel jokes. It was like a full story in them. So my mom ended up buying me this Iron Man annual. I didn't even know like how an annual was different from like a monthly comic either. But that was my first foray into comics. And despite that issue of Batman, I've pretty much been a Marvel kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say. So you started with a DC comic, and now you're a Marvel junkie and can't get enough, right?
Yeah, I think the Iron Man one was the original one, so I think I started with a Marvel comic. My brother started with Veronica Goes to New York or something like that, so he started with an Archie comic, which I still tease him about to this day. But yeah, we each got to pick one. I don't remember what my other brother got, but yeah, that's where it all started.
All right, great. And your favorite Marvel team?
Favorite Marvel team is definitely the Guardians of the Galaxy. I like the new version that's sort of led into the movie and that is now based on the movie, but my original love of the Guardians of the Galaxy is the OG, not even the OOG, but basically the version from the 90s that Jim Valentino had kickstarted.
Wait. So you mean that the original Guardians of the Galaxy weren't Drax, Gamora, Rocket Raccoon, Star-Lord that we know now?
No, it's everyone's favorites like Nikki and Starhawk and Major Victory, of course.
So these are cards that we've seen in Versus, but we haven't seen any of these in the movies, really.
Not too much, but some of them did make an appearance in the second movie. It kind of flew under the radar, and it was also kind of a weird tacked-on scene, but for someone like me, seeing Ving Rhames as Charlie 27 was pretty awesome. Seeing Sylvester Stallone as Starhawk was a very odd choice to me, but I guess we'll see where they take it in the third movie.
Wasn't there a character voiced by Miley Cyrus?
Yeah, that was Mainframe, aka The Vision, and yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah, we don't have to go into it. We don't have to talk about that. That's all right. Okay, well, I'm guessing that this is going to be a Guardian character, but who's your favorite Marvel character and why?
So my favorite Marvel character, if you've seen any of my videos or you've seen me on The Collective, you probably know that it's Major Victory. And that may look like sarcasm, but it's not. It's sincere. I really love Major Victory. And I think the main reason why is because he sort of imprinted on me as a young kid. Like, I picked up this issue of Guardians of the Galaxy. He was leading the team. he had Captain America's shield, and I was like, yeah, this guy seems cool. I'm going to have him be my favorite character. And then it's just always sort of stuck ever since, even when he's not in comics anymore, pretty much.
Sounds great. All right, well, let's jump to something a little more current, since Major Victory is quite old there. What Marvel comics are you currently reading?
So I'm currently reading... the things that I'm picking up monthly are Captain America, Captain Marvel, and, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy. And then there are a couple that I'm reading in-app, which are Doctor Strange and Black Widow. I mean, I'm reading a lot in-app, but those are the ones that I sort of think of as my comics that I'm reading every month.
Great. All right, well, I'm excited to have you on. Matt, same question to you. We'll start with, how long have you been reading comics, and how did you start?
I don't have a specific age on that, but comics have always been a part of my life. I remember reading my dad's original Spider-Man comic books. He had the original Sinister Six comic, and that's always the one that sticks out to me the most. And I first got my own comic book maybe when I was 12, 13. My aunt gifted me the first volumes of Ultimate X-Men and Extreme X-Men Volume 1. And those were my first forays into like the X-Men comic books. And I just fell in love with them from right then.
So your dad had a Sinister Six. That was the title, was Sinister Six?
Yeah, it was the OG Sinister Six comic books. Unfortunately, it is not in good condition anymore.
Oh, I was going to ask if he still had it.
No, none of his comic books lasted past us. My brother kind of tore into them a little bit. I'm not sure I didn't treat them very well either. We read them over and over and over again. There was even a Superman and Spider-Man comic book that was really good that he had, and I remember reading that one over and over and over again. Surprisingly, with all of that Spider-Man knowledge that I had as a kid and reading I did, don't really care for Spider-Man anymore. Sinister Six all the way, but Spider-Man, not a huge fan.
All right, well, if you're not a huge fan of Spider-Man, then who is your favorite team?
I've mentioned them already. It's got to be the X-Men. Loved watching the X-Men animated series. X-Men Evolution was a total jam for me. And then again, it all started with Extreme X-Men and the Ultimate X-Men graphic novels that I was able to get.
Mm-hmm. So Justin's favorite character was a Guardian because his favorite team were the Guardians. I'm assuming that your favorite character is an X-Men character. Is that correct?
Yep, definitely. Gotta be Jean Grey. Phoenix, no Phoenix. Jean is always one of my favorites. I really do like the Phoenix Force as well. I just think she's a really cool character outside of all of that. Maybe except when she's in any of the animated series, because anytime she uses a power, she just, faints. But in the comic books, she is an ultimate badass. She just had a series, X-Men Red, recently that I highly recommend. And it really just shows what she can do outside of having to have the Phoenix Force.
Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of Phoenix cards, and those are Jean Grey, right?
Only one.
Which one?
Dark Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix is Jean Grey. So who is the regular Phoenix card?
The regular Phoenix card, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she comes from the Avengers versus X-Men New Avengers tie-in, where they talk about how she was an Iron Fist, and she very much looked like Jean Grey. And in other tie-ins recently, and some of the Avengers showing the prehistoric Avengers, there was a Jean Grey looking woman as well. So the Phoenix just seems to pull itself towards these redheaded women, and this was just another one of those redheaded women that happened to control the Phoenix Force. But that's actually not Jean Grey.
Wow. All right. Well, sounds like we have a great topic for a future episode. And spoiler alert, there is an upcoming arc for Versus that is an Omega level arc. And Jean Grey is an Omega level mutant. She is an Omega level...
This is debatable. Currently, in Hickman's run for X-Men, she is only an Omega level telepath. That was written recently, but in previous issues before Hickman, she was an Omega level telekinetic. So, I don't know. Who knows what she is right now? She's just a badass.
All right.
Omega level badass.
All right. You heard it here. Jean Grey is an Omega level badass. I really hope we get a Jean Grey card, and I'll pay money to Super Awesome Games to change her superpower to Omega level badass.
That would be great.
That'd be awesome.
And if we do get a Jean Grey card, I really hope it is not in her Marvel Girl outfit. As iconic as the green dress and yellow mask are, I can't stand to look at it anymore.
All right. Well, what Marvel comics are you currently reading?
Everything X-Men except for New Mutants. So all of everything that came out of Powers of 10 and House of X, the Dawn of X. I'm reading X-Force. Marauders, I would say, is probably my favorite out of all of them. Excalibur is really cool. I did try New Mutants for a little bit, but I've never really been able to connect with that group of heroes. I like a lot of them. I just don't have the familiarity and connection that a lot of people do with them, so I dropped it after a few issues. And then there's no current comics for Jessica Jones, but anything Jessica Jones I have and will always read. But I don't think I'm collecting any other Marvel comics other than X-Men right now.
All right. Well, should we source some cards?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, we'll start with Justin. So, Justin, you'll be talking about Clea today. Clea is a defender in Versus. Clea came out in the New Defenders set, or if you say that quickly enough, Justin likes to say it's the Nude Offenders. New Defenders.
The New Defenders.
The New Defenders. The card number is DFX015. She is a Defender team affiliation. This card art is from Doctor Strange and the Sorceress Supreme, issue 5, page 6, if you'd like to look that up. The penciler and inker is Nathan Stockman. So Justin, what is Nathan Stockman's art style, or have they done anything else that we might know? Give us a little bit of information about him.
I'm not super familiar with Nathan Stockman. His style is kind of cartoony, and I don't really know how to describe it. It has sort of an older illustrative feel to it, I would say. Not that it looks like an older comic, but it kind of looks like Little Nemo in Dreamland. Like, it's very
classic.
Yeah, classic, sort of stylized, almost Art Deco-y kind of style to it. So it's pretty appropriate for a Doctor Strange series, I think. Very imaginative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how can I find Nathan Stockman online?
So you can find him on Instagram at Nate Stockman Comics, all one word, and on Twitter he's at Stockman Nate.
Cool. All right, I'll move on to the colorist. The colorist is Tamra Bonvillain. Do you have any information on Tamra?
She is on Twitter at tbonvillain, Bonvillan, not Bond Villain like Jaws or whatever his name is. And then Instagram, she's Tamra, Tamra, Tamra.bonvillain, although her Instagram account is currently empty, so you could maybe follow her and tell her to post something there, I guess.
All right.
And I'm going to add on to that for a second and just say she is working on Once in Future or Once in Future from Boom Studios, and if you haven't read that comic, it's fantastic. Those colors are beautiful.
Cool. All right, this was written by Robbie Thompson. Is there anything else that Robbie has written that people might know?
All that I've seen is Spider-Man Deadpool Volume 1.
People like Spider-Man and people like Deadpool.
That's true.
If we want to find Robbie on Twitter, how might we do that?
He's at rthompson1138.
Great. Well, that's the art. Now let's talk a little bit about the story. So, Justin, who is Clea?
Clea is the Sorcerer Supreme of the Dark Dimension, and she is also notably Doctor Strange's ex-wife. So,
ex-wife. They were actually married.
Yes.
I don't know why I thought that she was just his assistant.
Sexist.
There is a running joke in the issue that she's in where the other main character, Sir Isaac Newton, keeps calling her Doctor Strange's assistant, and she takes offense to that.
Maybe that's why I knew. Sir Isaac Newton is a very strange character in this arc.
Yes, he is indeed. So that's where she comes in this issue, is when they are teaming up with Sir Isaac Newton, who happens to be the Sorcerer Supreme of his time period.
So you say his time period. Does that mean that there are different Sorcerers Supreme from different time periods coming together? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, that's what this is about. So there's different Sorcerer Supremes from different time periods, and Merlin has brought them together, Merlin being the Sorcerer Supreme of his own time period. And he's brought them together to stop this creature called the Forgotten. So I'm just going to go ahead and read the recap in this issue before we dig into that. Is that good?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. Merlin, the Sorcerer Supreme of the Middle Ages, traveled through time to recruit Sorcerers Supreme from various eras, including Doctor Strange, to defeat a powerful foe called the Forgotten. A trip to the dungeon where the Forgotten was born taught the sorcerers that the beast was actually comprised of hundreds of magicians who had been imprisoned by Merlin. Sir Isaac Newton used the Word of God, forbidden magic, to defeat the Forgotten and free the imprisoned magicians, but then he turned on the Sorcerer Supreme, stealing the Demon Rider spirit from Kushala and Yao's arm, tattooed with a map to the Fountain of Youth, before locking them in the Forgotten Cell.
Wow, nothing going on there at all. And by Yao, they're talking about the Ancient One, correct?
Yes, a very young version of the Ancient One, before he became ancient.
And I think he's a little temperamental, right?
Yes, he's a feisty one.
Great. Well, what led to the story and what's going on here? It seems like we're on issue 5, which is right in the middle of this arc.
Yeah, so this story actually doesn't deal a lot with the arc directly, because it's kind of a flashback or an origin story about Sir Isaac Newton. And so it starts a little bit with them being trapped in the cell, but ultimately most of the story is about Sir Isaac Newton becoming the Sorcerer Supreme and then teaming up with Doctor Strange and Clea to fight Doctor Doom while they are in the Dark Dimension.
Well, that sounds like fun. And if you would like to find out what happens, go ahead and pick up Doctor Strange and the Sorcerers Supreme. I believe there is a trade paperback, correct?
I think so, yeah, and it's about 12 issues long, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other characters in there that people might be interested in?
I think seeing Yao as the very young Ancient One could be fun for long-time Doctor Strange readers. I think if you're a fan of Wiccan, he makes a somewhat rare appearance there in an altered form from what you usually see him as. And then there are a few other Sorcerer Supremes that are, I believe, original creations for this series, so they could, in all likelihood, pop up in future issues. Marvel likes to bring back their obscure characters in random places, so those are the first places that those characters appear, I believe.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that's the story. Let's go ahead and take a look at the card and dive into it a little bit more. Clea is a 6-cost character. She has flight and not ranged. Now, Doctor Strange, it's kind of obvious why he can fly. He has the cloak of levitation. I don't see Clea with a cloak, so why does it make sense that she can fly?
I'm not sure of the exact answer, but I'm guessing it's just magic.
Just magic flying?
Yeah.
All right, and she doesn't have ranged. I guess that makes sense. I just watched Doctor Strange this morning, and I don't really see users of the mystic arts using projectiles, even though they might be able to attack from a distance. So I guess that makes sense.
No magic missiles.
No magic missiles.
Yeah, I feel like that's the kind of thing you can sort of fudge for the game if you need to. She doesn't necessarily have to have range.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. All right, she has 5 attack, 5 defense, and 2 keyword powers. The first one is Sorceress Supreme of the Dark Dimension. You pay 3 less to recruit Clea if each resource on your side is face down. So how does that power make sense in the context of Clea and the game?
Well, I kind of like this power because it sort of looks at the state of your resources and kind of turns it into its own story in a way. because all of your resources are face down, then that makes her cheaper, and so it's sort of like when your resources are face up, they're in our world, and then when they're face down, they're in the dark dimension. And I think that's a really fun little bit of flavor to have that be what makes her cost less, because then it's like you're giving her resources in her dimension, and then she comes out into your dimension.
Wow, yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that.
I like that.
That's kind of cool. All right, and Clea has smart. When Clea appears, draw a card. Is Clea smart?
Yeah, as far as I know. I mean, she seems like she can hold her own with Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange is a very smart man, being a surgeon and everything. So she's definitely a sassy character, and smart and sassy together, I feel like, makes someone kind of clever and whip smart. So I'd say it fits.
It's a good combo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And who doesn't like drawing cards, right?
Yeah, true.
All right, do you think that this artwork accurately depicts Clea as a character?
I'm not super familiar with her, but I think it's nice. I think it shows her taking action. She's casting a spell. You can see something in the foreground being destroyed, so you can see that she's kind of being powerful. And meanwhile, Doctor Strange is kind of in the background cowering or looking surprised or whatever. And so I think it really shows her standing up and taking the lead here, which is really cool.
All right, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about Clea?
I have nothing.
Okay, we're going to get into the second card of the episode, which will be reviewed by Matt. I know he already talked about his favorite character, and maybe one of his second favorite characters is Jessica Jones. So we're going to talk about Jessica Jones today, and I know this can be a little bit of a touchy subject because Jessica Jones is one of those cards, and if you've seen a video on YouTube about Jessica Jones' worst card in the game, yeah, that was done by Justin, so we're not going to get into that rant right now. We'll hold off and maybe talk about that on a different podcast or something.
That was me? I don't remember that.
Oh, that was definitely
Must have been a
you.
fever dream.
Don't hate on one of my favorites.
All right, well, the solution for us right now is to talk about the card art and see what's going on here. So Jessica Jones, she has 3 cards. She is from the Legacy set, which really kicked off Versus, if you ask me. Gave us level 3 characters and loyalty plot twists. Great set. I'm so happy we got it, and it seems like we've been getting consistent set drops ever since then.
And your favorite card, Taskmaster.
Taskmaster. Taskmaster is the bane of my judge existence, but we won't go into that. All right, Jessica Jones has 3 cards, LEG 037, 38, and 40. She is also a defender in team affiliation. She has a supporting character and a level 1 main character, as well as a level 2 main character. This card art is from Spider-Man Volume 2 from 2016. It's in issue 5 and page 22, right at the end. The penciler is Sarah Pacelli. So Matt, let's go ahead and talk about the card art here. Who is Sarah Pacelli? Does she have a particular art style, or have they done any other notable work?
So Sarah Pacelli, she has a really clean art style to me. She really does these pretty neat, bold outlines around her characters with some softer interior lines. It almost makes them look like a sticker on a page, which I think helps highlight the comic book style that this brings. But her art is also quite realistic. So it's not going to look like a portrait or anything like that, but it really makes these characters seem like they could be walking on the street outside. So it really helps cross the line between comic booky cartoon character into something a little bit more involved and beautiful, really.
Mm-hmm. And how could I find Sarah online?
She is at Sarah_Pacelli on Instagram and Twitter.
Okay. And this artwork was inked by, I'm probably going to butcher the name, but looks like Gaetano Carlucci.
That's probably the best way to pronounce it. I don't know if I could do anything else. I didn't see any online presence for him.
Okay. And the colorist is Justin Ponzer. I will let you talk about Justin.
So Justin Ponzer, his art is quite beautiful. And I think we are very lucky to have had him do the coloring that he's done. He did pass away last year in 2019 from cancer. So I highly recommend checking out his art. It's beautiful. The colors that he does are so vibrant. He helped on the relaunch of Avengers in 2018. He was the colorist for the 2017 Defenders, which is actually one of Brian Michael Bendis's last books for Marvel before he went over to DC. And the colors in it are truly stunning. And then he's also done tons of Spider-Man and Miles Morales specifically. So I would really just encourage you, if you don't know who Justin Ponser is, or if you're not sure if you've seen any of his coloring, my top pick would be the Defenders from 2017. Go check that out.
He also did a reboot of Guardians of the Galaxy with Brian Michael Bendis. He was on some of the early issues there.
Was that Black Vortex? Did he help with that?
I don't remember that one. I know he was in the initial 2015 I think series. He was in the initial 6 issues or so. Maybe he may have gone longer than that, but I remember he was there kind of at the beginning.
He does really great stuff, so it sounds like he's kind of touched a lot of corners of the Marvel universe. So
I think he was for a long time Marvel's #1 colorist. I think he was their top tier guy. He was really incredible just with the books that he was on. The caliber of the books that he was on and the relaunches that they put him on. I think that Marvel really saw the talent in him. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he just has really subtle ways of doing weather and sunsets and things like that just give a scene a lot more of a cinematic drama.
Yeah.
He was definitely a great colorist.
I would really agree with that. I think I'm going to go back to Defenders, because again, I think it's really amazing. It really did feel cinematic in a way. The vibrancy on certain pages, but then also the darkness of others really brings the page, or really brings the art off of the page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but he was also a Versus player. He loved playing 2PCG.
I didn't know that.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think they had a fundraiser for his memorial.
That's amazing.
Last year. Yeah, and it looks like Justin is also responsible for coloring the Mantle Spider-Man, the Miles Morales card, Spider-Ham, Scott Watson's favorite card, and then the Double Mantle Spider-Man, the Star Spider-Man, Star, as well as the Mind Gem, Human Torch Mantle, the new one that we just got in the Fantastic Four set.
That's a beautiful one.
The Titan location. Emma Frost from the original set. And I think that's it.
It's kind of wild how prolific he was. He must have just always been coloring.
Yeah.
Just with the amount of effort he must have put into each page. I just can't believe how many books he's actually been able to work on.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, rest in peace. Justin, you mentioned Brian Michael Bendis. He also wrote this story. So, Matt, I know I've heard the name Brian Michael Bendis before. Can you tell our listeners where they may have heard his name before?
I mean, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you've heard his name multiple times for many different things, but I also want to say that anybody that hasn't even read a comic has been touched by Bendis in some way. He created Jessica Jones. He created Maria Hill, who was in the MCU Avengers movies, and he created Miles Morales. So he's been a huge part of Marvel, and he was actually pivotal in creating the Marvel Ultimate Universe alongside Joe Quesada. Joe Quesada brought Bendis in to write the Ultimate Spider-Man, which helped kick off this Ultimate Marvel Universe. I mean, people know Bendis from, I don't know, just so many different things. I mean, Justin said that he did Guardians of the Galaxy. He did, I don't know if I want to call it a relaunch with X-Men, but he brought back the OG X-Men on his run. I think it was All New X-Men, where he brought the younger versions of the original ones back. So he's touched a little bit of everything in the Marvel Universe. So I think it's hard to read a Marvel comic book and not have read something from Bendis.
He did a great Daredevil run.
Yeah.
He did New Avengers, too, I think.
Yeah, Daredevil, New Avengers. I'm sure he even did just some regular... Or was it Mighty Avengers, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, he's done everything in Marvel, which is probably one of the reasons he went over to DC as well, is because, you know, how many more times can you write the same characters over and over and over?
And I think he also created Powers. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's his creator-owned comic book, Powers. I believe it had a TV show on Sony's platform. I don't even know if it's still going, but he had 2 seasons for the TV show on there.
I think that's how he got his start. I think that was his first comic.
That very well could be. I've honestly
wrong.
never
It's definitely
read
his
it.
breakout comic, if nothing else.
I believe that.
All right, let's talk about the character of Jessica Jones. Matt, who is she?
I think Luke Cage put it best from the TV show Jessica Jones. She's a hard-drinking, badass mess of a woman. She's had a tough past. She got her powers from a car accident that killed her family, but also gave her super strength, limited invulnerability, and flight. The car they crashed into, or that crashed into them, had gamma-irradiated toxic material that gave her powers. She knew Spider-Man. I was about to say Superman. She knew Spider-Man in high school and actually saw him fighting, and that kind of gave her the push to go be her own superhero, known as Jewel. Not sure if many people know that, because it was short-lived. There was a time where she confronted the Purple Man, and I think this is where most people kind of catch on to who Jessica is from the show. But the Purple Man mind controlled her to do his dirty work, and she was actually brought out of that. And this is something that I just learned recently. She was brought out of his mind control by Jean Grey. She took away, or she blocked his psychic control over her, and actually gave her some psychic defenses so that she couldn't be mind controlled again. Interesting.
Cool. Well, it looks like in this picture she's taking a photograph. Is she a photographer?
Not professionally. She uses photography in her job as a private investigator. So she's on a stakeout right now.
Oh, okay. Well, sure. Tell me about the story. What led to this story? What's going on here?
So this is the first issue, again, like you said, of Spider-Man from 2016. And this is when Miles Morales' Spider-Man was brought into the main Marvel universe, Earth 616. Previously, like we were saying, he was in the Ultimate Marvel universe. And after the events of Secret Wars, he is now in the main Marvel universe. So the preamble to this first issue, it just goes... high schooler Miles Morales was bitten by a stolen, genetically altered spider that grants him incredible arachnid-like powers. This is a secret he has shared only with his best friend Ganke and his father. Ganke is helping Miles figure out how to be Spider-Man. It's way harder than it looks.
All right, sounds good. Let's take a look at the card. All 3 cards, the supporting character and both of the main character cards, have flight. I want to talk about that right away because I don't think she has wings. I watched the Netflix series and I didn't see any form of flight. Can you tell me how she flies?
I don't know, the how of how she flies. It's, how does anybody in the Marvel Universe fly? They just have this innate ability to do so. So she can fly. She's just really bad at it. It adds a lot of really great humor in the comics whenever she tries to fly. It's like she's drunk when flying, which wouldn't be surprising if she was, but her being drunk is not the reason she's bad at it. She just can never get a handle on actually how to fly. So she can fly. Again, she's just really bad at it.
I just read an issue called Incoming, and in that issue, she talks with Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel flies her down to her secret lair, and Jessica Jones is like, I can fly, and Captain Marvel basically says, I don't want you crashing and messing the place up. So.
That sounds about right.
Well, it looks like she doesn't have ranged.
Nope.
Why not?
She does her talking with her fists.
Yeah, she's a pretty tough gal. And speaking of tough, she has this ability tough on both main and supporting characters. Why is she tough?
Like most superheroes, she's someone that if you knock her down, she's always going to get back up again. But even more so for her, it's not about she always gets knocked down physically, but mentally and emotionally she gets knocked down quite a bit. And she always gets back up. She finds a way to continue going, and I think that's what really makes her tough. It's not about her physical prowess, it's about who she is as a person. She is a tough person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, she has that on all 3 cards, and it is a little bit annoying.
It's one of my favorite things about her.
Yeah. And then her supporting character has psionic protection. Enemy players can't use intellect, which is yellow, superpowers. What's that all about?
So as I touched on earlier, Jean Grey freed Jessica from Kilgrave's mind control, the Purple Man, but she also installed, for lack of a better word, some psychic defenses inside of Jessica's mind so that she won't be affected by any type of psychic powers later on.
Interesting. And that has absolutely no effect on the versus meta whatsoever,
no.
Right, Justin?
It's a terrible power. Nobody should ever use it. It's awful. Psionic protection? Who needs that?
Yeah, it makes total sense that this thing that Jean Grey installed in her mind that protects her from psionic protection, or protects her from psionic abilities, also protects everyone else on the board from psionic abilities. It's fascinating.
All right, let's take a look at her level 1 main character. Again, she still has tough because she is tough, but she has limited invulnerability at level 1 and at level 2, though she can only use that ability once per level. Pay a might, and Jessica can't be wounded this turn. Use this power only once while Jessica is level 1 or level 2, and it is a combat ability. What does limited invulnerability mean?
It's kind of like what it says. She's not all out invulnerable like Luke Cage is. Like a bullet would still take her down, but she can bear the brunt of quite a lot. I think the main image that comes to mind for me, not necessarily from a comic, but from the show, is when she breaks a whiskey glass and the glass doesn't cut her hands. So, it's something like that she's invulnerable to, but if someone was going to shoot at her, she's gonna take the bullet.
Mm-hmm. And level up ability at level 1, Stakeout.
Yeah, and this goes right back to the card art that we have, which I think was used really well. She's a PI, so she has to do stakeouts, and I think she really likes it because then she just gets to be alone and do her drinking. And she just gets to follow the people she's hired to check out, which in this issue is Miles.
Yeah, and it looks like she gains experience when a character appears, so that makes perfect sense. That's pretty thematic. And then level 2, when she levels up, she gains Collar the Suspect. Look at an enemy player's hand and discard a character from it using an intellect.
So collaring a suspect is literally detaining someone. So for this, my kind of thinking is that Jessica has found the bad guy or whoever she was staking out, which would be the card in this person's hand, and she's detained them. So she's taken them out and then given them, back to the police or, to the parents or, something like that. So really just finding the person and removing them from play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think that the artwork on this card accurately depicts Jessica Jones?
Definitely. It at least depicts the PI side of her. So, which I think is the strongest association for Jessica. She's a PI. She has her alien investigations firm. And I think this really does a good job of showing who she is on that level.
Mm-hmm. Her tough side is shown in the promo card, at least. Mm-hmm. So there is a Jessica Jones card out there where...
I would even say it shows not only her tough side because she's like kicking through this glass, but then it also shows like half the face of the Purple Man, and in a way she's kicking the Purple Man out of her mind, which also like shows her psionic protection. So yeah, between both cards, you've really got a good look at who Jessica is.
Wow, we're getting deep here. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about Jessica?
If you haven't read a story with Jessica in it, she started out with Alias from the Max series, where Brian Michael Bendis first created her. And originally, it was supposed to be Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, that he was writing about, but he realized that this character had such a distinct voice, he created Jessica Jones from that. So if you haven't read anything with Jessica Jones, Alias is where she began. But with that being said, I think my favorite Jessica Jones comics of recent years were her self-titled one, which just came out, I want to say 2016, 2017, or The Defenders, which I spoke about, that Justin Ponzor did the coloring for, that came out in 2017. Both were pretty darn fantastic.
All right, sounds good. Well, we have talked about these cards. We've talked about pencilers, inkers, colorists, and writers, but not everyone might know what that means. So I'd like to give a little bit of background info on those three jobs. The penciler is typically known as the artist. The penciler will get an assignment from a publisher like Marvel, which is what we're dealing with, to create art for a particular story. The artist will usually do the first drawing with pencil and paper and then scan the image to a computer to manipulate digitally. It's definitely gotten easier over time with technology. Pencil drawings typically focus on the details of a character, whereas the background can be suggestive. Once the penciler is finished, they'll send their work over to the inker. The inker traces the lines of the pencil drawing in a hard black line. They will fill in most of the background and only occasionally make a modification to a character's anatomy. They usually respect the penciler in that regard. The inker's job is to translate the penciler's image into something that has depth. To complete the image, the inker will pass the piece of work onto the colorist. The colorist receives the black and white file from the artist, but they don't always work on it immediately. Now, if you look at the front of a comic book or even online, you can find the penciler, the inker, and the colorist, but oftentimes there's a person that is left out that you may not know, and that's called a flatter. A flatter actually does some pre-work for the colorist. They lay out all of the flat colors before the colorist can then mold them using their tool of choice, almost always digitally. Once the base is set, the colorist is then responsible for manipulating that color, the value of the color, saturation, and contrast of those images to convey emotions and tones. The colorist is really what gives the image life. So here at Deconstruct the Universe, what we're really hoping to do is give credit to the pencilers, the inkers, and the colorists that have allowed us to use their images in this game and to talk about the stories that have shaped our Versus world. All right, well, that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching Deconstruct VS or Deconstruct the Universe. If you'd like us to source the art for a card, hit us up on Facebook, and we will do our best. Until next time, go read some comics.